pretty obvious. You can see here I'm working on an engine, and some of you probably know what engine this is and what car it's going into. This is a turbo diesel Mercedes engine, and it's going into a car that we call Digby. That's a 1982 300D sedan. And I know some of you have been following the series or showing a little bit of impatience about Digby. You want to make sure we get Digby done, get it rolling down the road next week. Well, you have to be a little patient here. You got to keep in mind a couple things. Number one, Joel has another job, and number two, I have a lot on my own plate. We can't spend all our time on Digby. Even this past week, I was up at my log cabin, sanding away on cedar boards because I had to create some live edge sills on the window trim I was putting inside the cabin. If any of you have done that, it's not easy. It's kind of an art form, a little bit of a labor of love. I still have some other projects going. We'll keep plugging away on Digby, okay? We'll let you know. The next time you see Digby, Digby will be going down the road. But I've been going through this engine, and I want to encourage any of you who take on a project like this, if you have one of these old diesel engines out or you're doing an engine swap, you want to make sure you do a lot of little things to the engine before you put it back in the car. It's a lot easier doing it out of the car. Well, I just finished adjusting the valves. I did a modification on the valve cover to keep it from leaking. This is real common. Once again, anything I talk about in this video, I'll just put links in the description or show more below, and you can go check out further information. I'm not going to go over everything because I've covered this in other videos, both on my website and on YouTube. But I was just getting ready to check one thing, which I consider one of the most important things ever, because the only time I've ever been stranded on the freeway in a Mercedes was because of the failure of this part. And I'm going to check this part on Digby here. It's a voltage regulator right here. It's mounted on the back of the alternator. You see this on Mercedes all the way from the 70s all the way up into the 90s and beyond into the 2000s. They have a replaceable voltage regulator that wears out. And a lot of people don't know that. They think their alternators fail. They go get a rebuilt alternator. They don't need an alternator, you need a regulator. So what I'm finding as I work on these old diesels now, because they're so old, well over 60% of them that I take out, they're almost ready to fail. I mean, am I going to dodge a bullet here? Now, the advantage of a diesel engine is the voltage regulator can fail, but the engine will still keep running. So you won't get stranded out on the freeway like I did in a W124 gas engine car, because when that voltage regulator failed, then the engine quit. Quit, going 70 miles an hour, just bang, quit. So very early on, this is 20 years ago, I started carrying spare voltage regulators in my Mercedes-Benz in the trunk. And sure enough, one time I was over in Eastern Washington in my 300 CE coupe. I was cruising down the freeway, and all of a sudden I started seeing the lights flicker, all the dash lights kind of flicker. And I said, okay, I know what that is. I pulled in off the road, got into a little town, found an auto parts store, pulled in the parking lot, and I changed the voltage regulator right there, and I was on my way. So we've called this run insurance for years on our website. So let's take a look at Digby's replacement engine and see how this voltage regulator fares. This is the location of the voltage regulator right here. It's held on with 2 screws, and on a lot of models it's fairly easy to get to. On some it's not so easy to get to. But on most of the turbo diesels, you can pull this out from underneath. I use a right angle ratcheting screwdriver like this. Some of the screws are Phillips, some are straight slot, and you just pull these 2 screws out. Now, this is kind of like, what are we going to find here, okay? This is so interesting every time I pull one of these off. I would say in the last year, I've probably pulled a dozen or so of these off. And I would say that probably 8 were bad, and some were real close to failing. Let's see what this engine has in store for us, okay? Oh, look at that. Okay, if I would have put this engine in the car, that wouldn't have lasted that much longer. See how short the brushes are? I'm going to hold up a new one here and compare it, and you can see the length of the 2 brushes. This is what wears out on these regulators. And when they wear down to where they will not make contact with the commutator on this alternator, you won't get any charge going into the battery. So this one has to be replaced. And this is what the new ones look like. You know, you just put it in and be careful not to damage those brushes. Put it in, push it forward, and just reinstall the 2 screws. So this is a very critical part. It's a very inexpensive part and fairly easy to replace on most models. Now, what I'm going to do in honor of Digby, I'm going to call this the Digby promo. You know, Digby back on the road promo. I've got a good stock of these Hella voltage regulators. So what I've decided to do is, I think I got about 25. So we'll run this until it sells out. I'm going to sell this regulator for 30% off our regular price. And what I'm going to do in honor of our business being 20 years old now, and this was the first kit we ever put up on eBay, the fuse kit with these fuses. So there are 2 things that you should carry in the trunk of your older Mercedes-Benz. One is a voltage regulator and a couple tools to replace it, okay? And the other, carry some fuses with you. Well, we've recently had something very interesting happen. We found out that these copper brass alloy fuses are no longer going to be made. Well, they're going to be all aluminum. And you know how I've complained about the aluminum fuses over the years corroding in the fuse boxes. So my daughter Kaya, we went all over the country and we literally bought up about 1,000 of these, both in the white and in the blue. We can't get any red ones, but we have boxes and boxes of these for the future because we believe, as we did 20 years ago, this is one of the best things you can do on a Mercedes as soon as you acquire it, is get rid of those old aluminum fuses and replace it with these type of fuses. So what I'm going to do as a promo in honor of Digby, you're going to get this for 30% off, and I'm going to give you 10 of the 8 amp fuses and 5 of the 25 amp free of charge. So grab it while you can. And make sure, go out and check your own voltage regulator. You might be amazed. And if you find the brushes are worn down to, let's say, about 1/4 of an inch, it's time to replace it. You know, I've really enjoyed having Digby around here because Digby teaches us so many lessons. And I think this was a really good illustration of the point I was trying to make earlier in this video. You know, when you have one of these engines out, you need to check a bunch of stuff and replace some parts. Maybe even if you don't have an engine out, you have one of these old cars, you just need to do it in a preventative manner. Don't wait until the voltage regulator fails. Inspect it and replace it before it does. And so is the case here. This is just one of those things we're going to do on this engine. If you look behind me on the table here, look at all these parts that are going to go on this turbo diesel engine right here. I know some of you are saying, well, Ken, are you going to show us all that? Yes, I am, so be patient. We'll come back in a later video and we'll do a synopsis or an overview of all the work and all the parts that we've replaced on this engine before we install it back into the car.